Dobry den, good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, Canada's Support for Women and the Most Vulnerable in Ukraine. My name is Oля Mustitska, and on behalf of UNF, the Ukrainian National Federation, Ottawa-Gatineau branch, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I also want to thank the Shevchenko Foundation of Canada for their partial funding for the technical aspect of the Zoom meeting. And the site that we're using. We have a lineup of speakers who will be telling us about their organization's projects, followed by a question and answer period. Please type your questions in the Q&A section of your screen. We will also hear about volunteer opportunities for you to become involved in projects in Ukraine. So stay tuned. First, though, I'd like to tell you about UNF. The organization was founded in 1932 and was incorporated by an act of parliament in 1950. Today, there are 14 branches across Canada with some 2,000 members. The UNF is dedicated to the preservation of Ukrainian-Canadian history and the cultural heritage of Ukraine. Its objectives include uniting all Ukrainian Canadians regardless of their political, religious, or other beliefs, and strengthening and expanding the place of the Ukrainian community in Canadian society. It's a nonprofit organization run by volunteers and supported by membership fees. The Ottawa-Gatineau branch has a young, dynamic executive team under the leadership of President Simon Sulima. So moving ahead to our presentation. In December of 2020, Global Affairs Canada announced that it would be providing over $32 million in support of the economic empowerment of women and the most vulnerable and marginalized groups in Ukraine, including persons displaced internally by the ongoing war. Today, we will be hearing about several projects which are being supported by this funding. Our first speaker will be Ina Ilienko, a program manager in Ottawa at the Co-operative Development Foundation, CDF Canada. Ina completed an MBA in agribusiness in Germany. She has over 13 years of experience coordinating international projects related to agriculture and trade, both across the not-for-profit and the business sectors. So, Ina, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ola, for a kind introduction. And if you allow, I will start sharing my screen and my presentation. And thank you very much for you and to UNF for organizing this event and sharing our field work from all projects that will be present today. Of course, there is always much more than we will be able to explain and tell in 10 minutes of these presentations, but you are open to ask your questions and come back always to us. At least I will provide my contacts and get in touch with me if you have more questions after the presentation. So I hope you can see my screen now. Hola. Sorry.
Ina, I think.
Yes. I have to go the full mode.
Yeah, works now.
It works now. Just a second. Slideshow. From beginning. Yeah. So the project supporting economic prosperity for women and internally displaced person is one of 5 projects that, as Ola mentioned, was approved in 2020 or even before by Global Affairs Canada, announced in December. And this So Ukraine project, as we shortly named the project, is a 5-year initiative that started in 2020 and will end in 2025. And the initiative is funded by Global Affairs Canada. And the project is led by The project is led by two implementing organizations, which is the Cooperative Development Foundation of Canada, CDF Canada, and co-signatory All Ukrainian Charity Foundation, Gdynia, which is located in Ukraine, in Dnipro City. So CDF Canada has experience in Ukraine that goes back to 1992, when CDF Canada, former cooperative, Canadian Cooperative Association, helped revive and strengthen the credit union movement in Ukraine and supported agriculture cooperatives. And so Ukraine project will build on this experience and will endeavor to address all challenges faced by displaced persons in Ukraine. Charity Foundation Gdynia has experience in peace building, post-conflict relief, and business development, law, and has a lot of experience working with internally displaced person in Ukraine. Just to give you a brief background about the reasons why this project has started and the background, what we use to develop the project and its activities. So political instability in Ukraine and an armed conflict that followed political protests that sparked in 2013, and the occupation and recognized annexation of Crimea by Russian Federation in 2014 has had a severe impact on civilians, in particular women and girls in disadvantaged situations, such as internally displaced women, rural women, older women, women with disabilities, Roma women, and women from other minorities. The conflict has transformed many families into single-headed and mainly female-headed households, affecting female internally displaced women and women from host communities alike. So if women IDPs are successful in finding a job, they are often discriminated but not being officially registered as employees and experience pay gap comparing with other men or other women employees. Women with disabilities in Ukraine continue to face significant constraints to full exercising of their rights comparing to men and other women. Approximately 1/3 of people with disabilities, approximately 1 million are women of working age, and only 1/3 of them are employed. The law on persons with disabilities in Ukraine put forth requirements for reasonable accommodation and sets a 4% quota for employers for employing persons with disabilities. However, often employers comply with regulation only formally, without really employing people. Another group that was strongly affected is also women who care for children and other family members with disabilities often require more tailored employment support. So therefore, there are other challenges, of course, for vulnerable population, especially women. But we identified that supporting employment and entrepreneurship might be one of the important elements toward their economic empowerment and overall well-being. After a rapid scan of various sectors, we identified that the garment industry in Ukraine might be one of the sectors with the high potential for economic opportunities, and it will definitely improve their quality of life. For example, garment sector, textile and leather goods industry in Ukraine is the second one only to the food consumption market with largest volume and turnover. Within 1 year, 90,000 individuals are employed in the sector, with around more than 76% being women. And Ukrainian textile and garment sector are exporting to 146 countries, with the European market being the largest, with 84% representing the export of that sector. But there are a lot of barriers especially for vulnerable population to be successful in that industry. For example, the industry is lacking a lot of skilled personnel Around 35% is the lack of the skilled personnel, and also for micro, small, medium entrepreneurs, some of the barriers are a lack of knowledge, business skills, because a lot of small, micro, medium enterprises are represented in this industry. Also, access to cheap financing, to the loans with low interest is another barrier for the industry. And of course, support and development of their production, marketing, export potential is another barrier to the industry and the target population that we will be working with. Therefore, the project has developed several components that we will be following to address those issues and help our target population in the field. So if you look at the slide that I'm presenting, the employment results channel will select women participants, train them, provide them technical, vocational training, and also workspace integration training, and will facilitate their employment at worker and professional positions gradually over 4 years. To reach employment of 2,000 women that we will be targeting within this component, and the highest demand after we analyze the sector is for seamstressing and machine operator positions. Another component and business development results channel for the project will be focusing on supporting 200 micro, small, medium enterprises, with 100 of them being startups. So we will select women participants, owners, co-owners, manager of those small enterprises. We'll train them in business development, support them with business planning, consulting on production, environmental sustainability, marketing and fundraising, and provide them with the access to loan program. So one of the main components of the access to finance strategy is to have a loan fund. So the loan fund will be established with one of the oldest credit unions in Ukraine that was established in 1992, also with the support of Co-operative Development Foundation in Canada. They will operate a loan fund and will disperse the loans to 100 entrepreneurs within our program. And with the lower rate, the rate of the interest rate will be lower than average market, and even lower than the one that was mentioned by our potential beneficiaries with the needs assessment process. So the next component, so actually the business development component will slowly transform in another component, which you can see one of their pre-last, it's co-ops development component. So groups of beneficiaries will be encouraged to form cooperatives to benefit from bulk purchases, joint use, shared use of equipment and machinery that will be provided within the project, and also to combine their marketing efforts to improve their efficiency on the market. Co-ops will be formed with the support, consultancy, resources provided by the project. So we are also planning to establish in Ukraine an innovative model of the childcare service, because this was one of the challenges identified by vulnerable women. In general, there is a challenge in Ukraine, sort of the lack of the childcare facilities. So in North America, there is a cooperative daycare model that exists, and we would like to try to establish this model in Ukraine as well within our project. Another important component, engagement and advocacy of the project, will address several issues identified in the garment sector, such as negative perceptions and stereotypes towards women, pay gap, and decision-making power, a lack of decision-making power by women. Even though women prevail in the garment sector, but negative perception stereotypes still exist. There is also a pay gap, even though there is no legal ground for that. And sometimes up to 30% of the pay difference was identified by women if they compare themselves to men in the similar positions. And also the most owners and top managers of larger companies are men. Besides, women entrepreneurs tend to have lower self-esteem and are reluctant to call themselves successful, even though their enterprises often has achieved a lot. So we will work and advocate on those issues, improve women leadership skills, And on this component, we also ensure the support from Manitoba Council of International Cooperation that will contribute, and they will contribute to this component of our larger project with Global Affairs Canada. And we also will work on these issues with the Garment Industry Association, Ukrlechprom. And just to briefly mention, I hope, Oля, I'm still within my time. Just to briefly mention the opportunities for Canadian-Ukrainian community. Our project relies on expertise from Canadians, and we will be recruiting within the project volunteers. There are multiple opportunities for both as professionals, who well-established professionals in the garment sector, credit union sector, co-ops development sector, or childcare services, but also for young professionals or fresh graduates from the universities, such as, for example, the position of the junior project officer to get their first experience in the international development sector with well-established NGO in Canada. And you can volunteer both as an e-volunteer, providing, of course, there are limited opportunities to travel, especially within the COVID, within the pandemic. So you can support online, providing trainings online, helping the project to develop documents, procedures, providing advice to our partners and stakeholders. Or there will be opportunities also for assignments in Ukraine from 30 to 60 days with all costs and per diems travel covered for Canadian volunteers. And also, if you don't see your expertise at the current list of opportunities within our project, you are free to register as a potential volunteer or consultant to CDF Canada, because we are implementing multiple projects in not only in Ukraine, but also in other countries all over the world. And there are multiple opportunities to volunteer with us. And we are always constantly updating the database of consultants and volunteers that we will be relying on. And if you're interested in more opportunities to get engaged with our work, feel free to contact our engagement director, who will tell you about other opportunities and who can put you also on the list to get regular updates of the stories from the field, including stories from Ukraine, how beneficiaries, how people, how women vulnerable will benefit from our project. I will just give you one example of another big project where your expertise, your knowledge might be of big use. We will be implementing, we started to implement the project with Global Affairs Canada. That is a 7-year project, and that also will focus on gender equality, economic empowerment of women, and is working in 5 countries in Africa. And we will be looking for 245 volunteers that will go north. It means from Canada to south. So, and positions expertise varies significantly, as we will be supporting local communities, local partners, local stakeholders. So please don't be shy, get in touch with us, and I will be happy to tell you more about our project in Ukraine and other opportunities. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Ina. And now we're going to move on to our second speaker, and that is Ilona Herasimova, the country director for Pact Ukraine. Ilona has nearly 25 years of experience in managing international development projects in areas such as health and social services, child welfare, orphans and vulnerable children, women's empowerment, and gender equality. So live from Kyiv, we have Ilona. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Oля. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's really a privilege to be with you today and to share some updates about our work in Ukraine. Can you see my screen? Yeah, the presentation is on. So once again, thank you for this opportunity. I'm representing Pact, an international development nonprofit founded in 1971, and we are on the ground in nearly 40 countries today, including Ukraine, We're working in partnership with local organizations, private sector and governments to build lasting systemic solutions. And our vision is a world where everyone owns their future. We are in Ukraine since 2008, and since last year, I'm trying to change the slide, but it's a bit slow. Come on. Oops. Yes, since last year, we partnered with Global Affairs Canada to implement a project called Women Included, Nurturing Growth and Security. We call it WINGS for short. It's a 5-year project, and the goal is to enhance economic prosperity for women and most vulnerable and marginalized living in Ukraine. Geographically, we are present in 4 regions of Ukraine: Kyiv, Poltava, Lviv, and Kharkiv, and our emphasis is on rural women. As a result of the project, we expect 2,800 women to benefit from project interventions. I really don't want to go into detail about the background or the rationale for the project, but a couple of issues I want to point out is that women represent more than half of the population in Ukraine. However, gender inequality is still one of the leading human rights violations. It is manifested in the unequal opportunities in various domains of public life, including political representation and decision-making, economic opportunities and access to resources, empowerment in the family, and vulnerability to discrimination and violence. And since we're all living in COVID-19 pandemic context today, I don't think that's news to anyone that women and girls are especially vulnerable to the impact of COVID. The barriers to economic empowerment for rural women are especially high, and rural women in Ukraine represent actually 1/3 of women's population. Every third woman lives in rural area, and every third young rural woman doesn't work or study because of family responsibilities. So this is one of those barriers on an individual level, the family duties and family responsibilities. It's also a lack of required qualifications or experience and low confidence. There are also barriers on employee-based level. There is a lot of discrimination manifestations. And just to give you an example, when interviewed for a job, that's a common question to ask, are you married? How many kids do you have? And then if you have a kid or a couple of kids, that could be a reason for not getting a job. Institutional barriers are there as well. There is a network of public employment centers across the country, but they're really not focused on individual needs of women. And there are no tailored programs that would consider all different needs, again, of women and girls. Structural barriers are there, and that's what we call a lack of community-based social infrastructure, no daycare centers, and no one to look after children, no support services to take care of the elderly family members. Transportation is a challenge. We talked to women, and some of them told us that they had to wake up, get up at 5 in the morning and walk for an hour or 2 to the nearest bus station. So there are definitely barriers. And looking at that, we came up with our theory of change, and we say that if rural and most vulnerable women have self-confidence and necessary knowledge and skills, and if they're situated in a nurturing environment that promotes their employability and entrepreneurship, then women will be economically secure and contribute to inclusive and shared economic prosperity in Ukraine. So when designing the project, we came up with a threefold approach. We are working to strengthen the environment, what we call the nurturing environment that will promote women's economic security. We will work directly with women and girls to help build their confidence and skills. And we will also work with the Ukrainian civil society, because we understand this is a 5-year project and the project will end, but we want the program and opportunities for women to continue being available in Ukraine. Speaking of the nurturing, supporting environment, we will be working with men a lot. We'll be working with men and family members and communities and opinion leaders within the communities. I didn't mention in the beginning when I said we'll be in 4 regions of Ukraine, we won't be working across the whole region. We'll be working really on a community level in these territorial communities, 5 communities in every region, and overall 20 communities, where, as I said, we'll be working with women themselves, but also with the families and communities and opinion leaders to encourage these shifts in cultural norms and stereotypes around women's and men's roles. We will work with local and regional business, and we'll engage them through a variety of project activities, because we really want to promote a more inclusive business ecosystem. In the coming months, we'll be launching an information campaign, really local targeted information campaign, exactly for the same purpose, to shift the mindset around traditional roles of men and women, and to increase awareness of positive effects of women's economic engagement. Working directly with women, we'll start with offering them an intervention, which we call a studio of opportunities. This is a motivational intervention, which includes individual and group sessions. And the idea is to, again, to motivate a woman, to build her self-confidence, to give her some basic skills so she can actually look for an economic involvement opportunity through 2 pathways, either through an employability or by starting her own micro small business. For those who will go with their first option, finding a job, we'll provide employability skills trainings, and we'll also refer them to different kinds of vocational programs, etc. For those who are interested in starting their own business or being like self-employed, we will also provide seed funding in addition to training. As I said, we will be working with the local partners. We have 3 local implementing partners, civil society organizations who have experience both working with women, with vulnerable populations, and implementing economic empowerment programs. And we will be building their capacities throughout the life of project. We already handed over a lot of evidence-based interventions that Pact has designed and implemented in other countries and in Ukraine. And through the life of project, we'll be, again, continuously building their capacities through trainings and community of practice meetings and all kinds of peer exchange and networking events and opportunities. We've been implementing this project for over a year right now, and it was basically laying the foundation, doing a lot of research, making sure that the comprehensive service package, which I described, the studio of opportunities, employability skills training, and business skills training, that this package really meets the needs of women and can be well received, and women can benefit from those interventions. So we went to the project communities, we met with men and women, and we learned a lot about their fears and their hopes. While women are overall interested in being economically independent and economically secure, they really lack self-confidence. They have a lot of hesitance. They also think about home duties and responsibilities, and they don't even consider an option that their husbands or their men can actually share those responsibilities with them. They look for a job, but the back of her mind, like a woman thinks, oh, but I also need to combine that and my home responsibilities. Men are overall supportive of women looking for an employment, but they don't take it seriously. They look at it as an opportunity to socialize. They say, oh, nice, let her go work so she can socialize and make sure that, again, my dinner is ready and my kids are taken care of. So there is a lot to do in terms of attitudes and these patriarchal norms and gender role stereotypes. One thing that we realized is the need for role models. And Zina was talking about opportunities to get involved and get engaged. I think this is really an opportunity. We need role models, not only from Ukraine, but from Canada as well. We really need to show women that they can do it. It's doable, it's possible. They look around and they see the women who are in the same situation as they are. So the idea is to bringing the women who have been successful as employees, successful as business, in their own business, and motivate women and help them, like make that first step. We also realize the pivotal role that the private sector can and should play, and we will be working closely with the private sector, as I said, but the idea is to bring the private sector and government and civil society together, because by working collaboratively, they can really move forward the women economic empowerment agenda by contributing from these three different perspectives. I also want to admit that COVID-19 in reality opened a lot of new opportunities. While there are a lot of constraints, there are also opportunities. We've learned to do so many things remotely in the past year, and I think one of the learnings is that you can engage many more people, both the beneficiaries as well as volunteers, as well as partners, and do things collectively and do things collaboratively online. So we are open for cooperation. I didn't put our contact information on the slides. I'm sure you'll be able to find us through Olga or other colleagues if you are interested, because together we can make it work. And we strongly believe that women and girls can change the world and can change it for the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Alona, for your wonderful presentation about your work with Pact and opportunities for our people to participate as well. And our third speaker is going to be Martin Borivash, Ukraine Program Manager for Socodevi, a non-governmental organization based in Quebec City here in Canada. Martin holds a master's degree in Co-operative Studies from Sherbrooke University and has worked in the area of international development for more than 20 years. Since 2011, he has worked in Ukraine developing a cooperative movement in agriculture. So please go ahead, Martin.
Thanks, Olya, for the presentation, and I will try to share my screen. We should be able to get it. Just a second. There we go. So I think now we're seeing it, right? Everybody had a chance to see it. Thanks. Good. Okay. So yes, I'm Martin Bourivage, and it is a pleasure really to be with you today. For myself, it's I think that the first time I had the opportunity to talk directly with well, your organization and with the Ukrainian diaspora. Somehow this way. So it is really a pleasure for me. So in the next 10 minutes, I'll try to give a sense, to give you a sense of what Socodevi is doing in Ukraine through this project that we call We Prosper. Just 2 words about Socodevi. Socodevi, as you said, Olia, is based in Quebec City. It has been funded in 1985, and it represents basically all the co-op movement of Quebec, whether it is in agriculture, forestry, housings, all the major federations of co-ops are gathered into Socodevi, except the credit union movement, Desjardins, that you certainly know of. They have their own organization. Quickly, we prosper. The project itself, well, it's a project financed by GAC, like the other ones of Pact and CDF. It's a 5 years project. It's a project in agriculture, right? That's what we want. That's in rural area that we're going to work, supporting 1,500 agriculture producers in Donbass area, directly in Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast. The basic idea is to create two co-op, one in each oblast, and those co-ops are basically based or will be similar of to the Canadian co-op model. Finally, what Socodevi is doing is trying to replicate the Canadian co-op model. And another important component of the project is supporting a network of women from rural areas. We will get a bit more into details for the network. So you see the map. This is the area where we intend to work. And by the way, we're working with a Ukrainian partner, which is the Dnipro Extension Service, working in agriculture since 2004. And we are partnering with this extension service for now more than 10 years. So the area will be close in Donetsk, close to Dnipro Oblast. That's where we already have worked in the past in dairy. So we'll try to join a bit the different efforts done in the past. And Luhansk, it's totally new for us. And this is the area, as you see in blue, that's where we've seen a potential to work with agricultural producers. What we're going to do, as I said, working with agricultural producers in three productions: in vegetables, in dairy, and in grain. And all these value chain are value chain where women have an active role, an active presence. Maybe less in grain, but that's the challenge. That's a challenge to be able to work with women leader in the grain production. In vegetables, what we have to face, the main problematic, I will say, is to supply or to replace the lost Russian market of 2014. Since 2014, the Donbass producer lost this market, and we will make efforts to redirect this production towards other market. Obviously, Donbass vegetable production, it's not as strong as Kherson. I think Kherson in the south of Ukraine are really the leaders in vegetable production, but we have to make a space for Donbass production in vegetable. In dairy, the main challenge remains increasing productivity per farm, per cow. And the other challenge is to gather a pool of milk, a pool of product to increase the bargaining power of the producers. And this is an example of the support we're bringing. Well, this looks, well, difficult to see what it is, but it's actually a barn, a dairy barn that we are building with the Bitkin family. This kind of endeavor or this kind of support we've done in the past for about 150 family farms in Ukraine, and we're replicating the model. Basically, we're supporting family farms that want to increase their herd, usually from 3, 5 cows up to 10 or 20, so they can make a living out of dairy farming. Okay, well, the project started a few months ago, well, a year ago, and what we have been able to do so far is to make study tours or exchanges with producers already organized in co-ops. In Lviv area, in Dnipro area, there's already agriculture co-op that have a few years of existence, and we brought the farmers, the groups of farmers of Donbass into these area, so they get acquainted, they get exposed to a successful experience. In the past, as Socodevi worked since 2008 in Ukraine, we've been able to work or help creating a union of co-ops in Dnipro. This union that is called Gospodar is doing advocacy for small producer, and that's what we intend to keep on with the actual project, hoping that the new co-ops will integrate this union, Gospodar, and be able to advocate for their needs. The Network of Rural Business Women, it's an initiative that we started in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. There's an annual event where we gather 150 women from rural areas, and that's where they're having training activities, they're setting priorities for the year to come. One of the priorities they're working on is to define better the status of rural businesswomen in the family farm. So this is something that has been going on for a few years. We will go on with this. And the network was able to get representation in different public hearings. So we believe we will be able to strengthen the network in the next 5 years. And I strongly believe this network will have a good or a real importance in the political life of Ukraine, at least for rural areas. Finally, just a few words I wanted to share with you. And this is from my colleagues of the Extension Service. The Extension Service, where we're talking about 10 people working for the project. And they have been traveling in Lugansk and Donetsk last summer. Between the two pandemic waves, they were able to get in the field and make the interviews, surveys to 400 women in the field, and they were surprised. They were surprised by the diversity of population of Donbass. They met Greek communities. They've seen a village in the area of Velika Novosilka, 3 villages of Greek population that are there for 500 years, working in agriculture, working in vegetable. The same, they've seen also a village of Lemko, if I'm not mistaken, coming from Galicia. From 100 years ago, they're now living into this area. So they were only surprised by the diversity of population from this area. They met with Turks also. So that was a special, something new, even for them. So that was a quick presentation, Olya. And well, hopefully you get a sense of what Socodevi pretend to do for the next 5 years with the project We Prosper.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. And we were to have a fourth speaker, Nurgul Asilbekova from UN Women Ukraine. Unfortunately, we had a last-minute message that Nurgul is not well, and was not able to participate. So we wish her a very quick recovery. And we will move on then to the question and answer period. So again, I invite all of our participants to submit their questions in the question and answer section. And if you want a specific panelist to respond, please let us know that. Otherwise, I'll just open it up to our panelists. Okay, let's look at our questions. Here, one of our participants asks, what do you think is the main factor that has already helped to improve women's positions in Ukraine's society? So who would like to address that?
Hello, I can probably start, and my colleagues will chime in. I think there's been a lot of progressive legislation approved on the national level. Like last year, for example, Ukraine joined the Biarritz partnership, which is all about women's empowerment. But in reality, legislation without implementation is basically a dream, right? It's not reality. At the same time, there are certain legislative acts, for example, a quota for women's participation in the elections. Yes, that every party should have a certain percentage of women on their party list. So this has been supporting women's political participation. In terms of women's economic empowerment, just recently there was legislation adopted that allowed for paternity leave, not only maternity leave, but for paternity leave. So this is a huge step forward in terms of giving women an opportunity to go back to work after the child is born. But overall, I would rather mention the constraints, not the progress. And the constraints are, a lot of constraints are internal constraints, that lack of self-confidence, which I mentioned before, and the fact that the stereotypes around the gender roles, they're very, very firm within the Ukrainian society. So working with women to help them get rid of these internal constraints and working with the communities and families and men, that will really help us to move the agenda forward. Thank you.
Any of the other panelists want to respond to that question?
I might add from my side, and I really liked what Alyona mentioned about the role models. And I think in Ukraine, we have more and more role models among public key opinion leaders who promote gender equality, who promote women leadership, women entrepreneurship, and also the public discussion. And there are much more events that bring up those questions publicly. But I think it still is on very low level, on very low scale, and it reaches mostly women in large cities, but it's really not reaching those vulnerable population that we are targeting with our projects. And also, I think practical application of all this public discussion is very important. With the project like Martin is doing in the field, Alyona or ours, the implementing partners get the opportunity to talk to women, to help them with practical tools, to help them with access to finance, to help them to get together with other women who went through the same process of establishing themselves, of overcoming the challenges and stereotypes. And I think those practical tools, they are really, really helpful to create even more role models in local communities, in areas that are usually not reached by public discussion and key opinion leaders that are located mostly in large cities.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to our next question. Out of many ways to help the most vulnerable in Ukraine, how do you prioritize what gets supported first? Who wants to address that?
Well, I can say a few words
Sure.
in terms of priority to prioritize the person that will support. Well, as for Socodevi, for instance, what we intend to do is to support the producers in general in agriculture. So obviously we will help or support the smallest one, the small and medium size. And in rural areas that are the most remote, I would say, that don't have access to other services. So I will say that this is a kind of priority for us. That's how we will define who we will support.
Any of the other panelists want to add to that?
We chose to focus on rural women because they face additional challenges and additional constraints, as I mentioned earlier, and they really lack access to resources, to skills building resources, as well as to finances and markets. So that was our choice to focus on rural women.
I can add also from our side, from our project perspective, we have a clear target among 2,200 women that will be targeted within the project to support 50% of them should be internally displaced women. 10% of them should be women with disabilities. And of course, the rest are the other vulnerable groups. And vulnerable groups we usually define based on the law on social services in Ukraine, but also assessing, because sometimes people might get into vulnerable group just by certain lives accidents. So this will be assessed on the individual basis, of course. But in regard to co-ops and entrepreneurs development, it's also important for the such project like ours, I think, to allocate the resources efficiently. So they will establish basically a potential scale-up effect as well. So here it's important to target not only vulnerable population, but among this population to select those people who have entrepreneurial skills, who have trust in the community, who are motivated enough to use the resources provided by the project and use them efficiently and effectively and sustainably in the future.
Okay, thank you. Here we have another question. I understand that Canadians can provide support by volunteering their time and donating money. How else can we support these wonderful initiatives? Anybody care to respond to that? How can we Canadians help support other than providing time and money? Wonderful initiatives that you've told us about today.
Well, on my side, I will say to, frankly speaking, is to keep putting some pressure at the political level, right? There's a lot that, how to say, Ukraine needs still a lot of support for the years to come. And I think for any Canadian that believe that Ukraine deserve a hand, deserve to be helped. I think from all Canadians to have to make a small phone call, to communicate with their representative or their MP. I think that is a way to do. Obviously, concretely in the project, as Ina said, volunteering is always welcome, and there's always room for someone who has a specific ability or has some time. to dedicate their project, I think there's always a way to receive them.
Help us tell the story. Help us tell the story of Ukraine's progress and success, as well as of Ukraine's needs. So let's join efforts to tell the story, to make it heard.
And I will add to Martin and Alena as well that there are multiple ways. So on one side, of course, there might be cooperation between Canadian entrepreneurs and Ukrainian entrepreneurs to build these linkages. I know of examples of our leaders of the Canadian-Ukrainian community. Mr. Roman mentioned that they hire a lot of Ukrainian IT specialists for their companies to provide services. There are opportunities to maybe buy Ukrainian clothes, buy Ukrainian products, to promote Ukrainian produced in Ukraine products in Canada. Then another opportunity that I might think of it's in the international development sector, there is a new term that is called impact financing. When you have your investment, you always have a choice. Are you going to invest in an enterprise that is very high profitable, but maybe doesn't has really a social responsibility component, it doesn't really care about the environment, or you can, and there are already such resources to invest your funds also in social enterprises. And there are also such enterprises in Ukraine that provide not only have a production, but also care about the community, that also have social initiatives. And it really helps to create the scale-up effect in Ukraine, but also in other countries.
Okay, thank you. Anna Dombrowska writes, CNEWA Canada, it's an organization that she works with, also supports most vulnerable in Ukraine. How is the government of Ukraine contributing to important women empowerment projects that you are leading in Ukraine? So what contribution have you had from the Ukrainian government?
Within our project, for example, we've been talking to the employment service, which has a network of employment centers across the country, of how we can join efforts, because they also do have training programs, vocational training programs for unemployed individuals. So we are planning to work with them to tailor those programs to the needs of women. But what's even more interesting, they also have funding available. In addition to like unemployment benefits like payments, they can also provide seed funding for entrepreneurs, but they don't have the capacity to provide skills building to all those who want to start a business. So we were thinking of joining efforts. We do the skills building and training and help these early stage entrepreneurs to get their business off the ground, and the government actually contributes the funding. A story to be told later and to be seen, but we'll be happy to share when it happens.
I can add to what Alena already mentioned, because our project is also focusing on employment and also has a startups component. So we will be using the same opportunity that the Ukrainian government is providing. And there are also smaller scale like funding opportunities or support from the government. For example, there is a program to support, to compensate some expenses for the childcare if there is a person that is registered. So there is a certain procedure, and we identified that a lot of vulnerable women, they don't even aware of this opportunity, but they could use this opportunity because they can dedicate somebody who will be a primary child or the childcare for their children to form a group, and they will get a compensation for such services to this person. So it will be an additional income for this woman or whoever will be selected. And the part of our efforts is to understand all these opportunities that exist for our target population and inform our beneficiaries in the right way about existing opportunities and help them to use them, because sometimes there is local funding available for small entrepreneurs, but they need to have a business skills to develop a business plan, to present their a business plan, or to prepare the documentation for the application. And sometimes they lack the skills, which are sometimes very basic. So this is what our program will be doing as well.
Great, thank you. And time has really moved on. We have one final question, which I hope each of the panelists will address very briefly. And that is a question from Angelina Ostapik. And she asks, what is the main thing that you would like attendees to gain from your presentation? So.
Well, I can say a few words. Well, I think we need from these presentations to see that there's things that are progressing in Ukraine. There's so much things going on in the papers these days about Ukraine that we can lose the sense that this society is progressing. That there's really achievements that needs to be shared. And I think in that sense, we've seen that the Canadian government is prioritizing the women's support for the next years. And I think it's important that we have to get back after this presentation saying that Canadian and Ukrainians are working along to fill the famous gaps between women and men. I think there's something going on, and I hope that those attendees can see this optimism that we all feel.
Yeah, if I may add a word or two, I mean, I completely agree. There is a lot of progress. Ukraine is the land of opportunities. Many years ago, Ukrainians helped to build up Canada, and it's nice to see Canadians helping to build up Ukraine these days. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Maybe if I may add from my side, just to what already colleagues said, I agree that there is a lot of achievements, and I think, like for me, one of the examples of the achievements is, and I know, for example, the work of Martin's organization has been doing in Ukraine for more than 10 years now. And when we are talking about Ukraine's independence and establishing of democratic institutions, cooperatives, for example, those are grassroots democratic institutions that help people to learn what does it mean self-reliance, what does it mean self-governance, what does it mean to come to joint conclusions, to come to joint decisions, to discuss different issues, and don't rely on support from the government or from other funders, but to work towards this progress and well-being on their own and using the local resources that are available. And also, what I would like for our participants to take also from this seminar, from this webinar, that I moved to Canada also not that long time ago, and I still have relatives, I still have friends in Ukraine, and I was looking, and I'm still looking for opportunities to keep these ties and to keep supporting Ukraine on its path to stronger country and stronger governance. And you must understand that there are multiple opportunities in Canada to contribute and to provide this support to Ukraine if you are interested to do so. And I think those who joined the seminar, they probably are. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, that brings our webinar to a close. I want to again thank our panelists, Ilyona, Martin, Ina, for your very interesting and informative presentations. And I do hope that our participants will follow up with exploring the opportunities to become involved as volunteers in Ukraine. And I also want to thank Simon Salima for providing the technical support. Simon's in the background, our president, but we couldn't have done this without him. So again, thank you so much, and we'll end here. Thank you.
Thank you.